superintendents are really, questioning, hey, do I have to keep doing what I've been doing every year, or can I be more outcome focused? Our superintendents are the stewards of the most valuable assets in the game. Like the golf courses are by far the most valuable assets in golf. If there's no golf course, there's no golf club.
Matt Pringle, welcome to Changing the Business of Golf.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here in chilly Orlando.
It is rather chilly. We're at the GCSAA in January, and it's kind of colder. You've come from Pinehurst, where you've had a kind of a large dump of snow.
Yeah, we left the family with 6 or 7 inches of snow, which the dogs love, but the schools don't, and so the kids are still out of school for probably another day or two.
Well, a very warm welcome to this particular conversation anyway. But Matt, in this series, I asked my guests to talk about 3 changes that they would propose to improve the business of golf. But before we get into those changes, let's hear a little bit about you. You're the managing director of the Green Section at the USGA, and since 1920, the Green Section has been focused on advancing the science and sustainability of golf course maintenance, focusing on research, course consulting, education and outreach, data and tools, championship agronomy. So there's a lot going on there
at
the
Big
Green
change.
Section. But tell me, just what was your journey into golf? What was your first experience of golf?
My uncle introduced me to the game, taking me to a little pitch and putt par 3. Like most kids, I played with my dad a few times, played with friends. I come from a Canadian military background, so there was a couple courses that the military ran in Nova Scotia, Canada, that I got to play. And looking back, it's actually probably pretty Scottish-looking golf, even though I didn't know what Scottish golf was when I was 10 or 12 years old. So I played, never that particularly well. I never played competitively, just for fun. When I was in grad school, I got the chance to play a Great Stanley Thompson course in Hamilton, Ontario, Dundas, actually, Ontario, for pretty cheap as a student. So I just couldn't play Saturday and Sunday mornings, but I loved it. And I could still hit balls. So played pretty actively right up through grad school.
And it was actually your father's background in the military and his posting to different places that brought you into closer connection with golf, and in fact, the USGA.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very serendipitous, and it's funny the way life works sometimes. He joined the Navy with basically a high school diploma and ultimately worked his way up through engineering school, through the military, and was at the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, beautiful Monterey, California, at the end of the 1990s and early 2000s. And of course, we held the 2000 Pebble Beach Open that year that Tiger won, running away. And I was just looking for tickets because they were living in Carmel, California. And I was just looking for tickets to the U.S. Open, and they had a job posting for a mechanical engineer in our ball and club rules. And
that's what you were studying at the time.
I was studying mechanical engineering. I was getting my PhD in mechanical engineering, and they were looking for one. And I, put a resume in, and I really didn't think I had any chance of getting the job. But 26 years later, here I am. So it was really, quite a coincidence and quite a remarkable, change to where I thought I was going to be.
At the time, did you know the USGA had any interest in mechanical engineering?
No, I had no idea. I had obviously had a rule book in my, it would have been the Royal Canadian Golf Association rule book, but, deferring highly to the USGA rules. So I knew the USGA from the rule book and obviously from the US Open, and would watch that every June. But I really didn't know the depth of the physics and engineering that went into the club and ball rules.
And that's where you started.
That's where I started, yes.
And you're actually the co-inventor or inventor of, and you have 7 United States patents for various tools and devices that the USGA use, including the test for the pendulum effect on drivers.
Yeah, so I came to the USGA at a very interesting time. If you remember back, if you've been in the game, this long, if you remember back to non-conforming drivers and the Callaway ERC, for example, and
I remember it well. I was an
Arnold
equipment editor
Palmer,
on it.
right? Exactly. So it's kind of a tempest in a teapot when I look back on it, but it was a big deal in golf at the time, and I was entering the USGA right at that time when the USGA had implemented a rule, but the R&A had not, and so there was different rules around the world. And when I entered, so I feel a little bit like Forrest Gump. It was in the right place at the right time. I was able to come in and start thinking about new creative ways to measure the flexibility of drivers, um, which was a good enough and big enough change to the way we did it that the RNA bought into it, and that allowed us to bring the rules back together on spring effect, which was really a great kickstart to my career. And the test that you talked about, measuring the flexibility of the driver, well, it turns out that I could use almost exactly the same physics and the same software and some even the same sensors to measure the firmness of the putting surface. It's exactly the same principles, and um, and so if you remember, 2004, the U.S. Open was held at Shinnecock, and the green firmnesses were probably, I mean, got away from us in a way that wasn't ideal. And so um, having a device to objectively measure the firmness of the putting surface became a really good tool for the USGA from 2005 on. And so that device, another one of the inventions, um, started using it at the 2005 U.S. Open in Pinehurst. Went to Cherry Hills for the Women's Open. Went to went to Whistling Straits for the Senior Open. And that really launched my career into turf, because I stayed with the equipment standards team for another till 2016, so another, I don't know, 10 years. But I began dabbling and collaborating, interacting with the green section. And so in 2019, when they were looking for a new leader for the green section, they tapped me to do it, and I've been thrilled to make the change into turf.
And it's that scientific approach, and it's the measurement and evaluation and data and tools that we're going to be speaking
Yes,
about in your three
exactly.
changes.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It's an exciting time to be in turf, I think. Um, there is it's always been a combination of science and art, and really the USGA Green Section was started in 1920. As you said, it was a collaboration between the USGA and the United States Department of Agriculture. And at that time, the science of agriculture was really taking off, and so this was an opportunity to bring those same sort of thinking into turf. And that's been a continual progress for hundreds. We're into our 106th year, but I find it to be a really exciting time because with autonomous robotics, with GPS, with sensing, there is more and more of the science going into turf grass management, which I think allows the art to be even more productive and successful. And so it's a really neat time. And the three changes that I talk about, I think, are all in that realm of being a great time um, to expand what it means to be a turf grass manager.
Matt, your first change for the business of golf is to become more focused on outcomes. What do you mean by that?
Well, so we consider it on our team to be an update to the sort of data-driven mantra that we hear a lot, and we've been hearing a lot in turf. And I think it's time to. I think we've driven the awareness of collecting data um, in a great way for the industry, but I think it's time to start thinking more about what are we going to do with that data. Like, data on its own is not that valuable, and so what we are talking about is being driven by outcomes. Like, we're in the business of delivering a great golf experience. That's what superintendents do. We're not turf farmers. We're not looking for bushels of clippings. We're looking for a great golf experience. And so what does that mean? The putting surface is a huge driver of the golf experience. And so measuring the things that matter to golfers, that's data, but it's really outcomes. So we're talking about the smoothness, speed, and firmness of the putting surface. All three of those things matter greatly to the golf experience. And so it makes sense for the superintendent to be measuring those outcomes and then doing the things that they need to do to drive those outcomes. Um, and if there's something they're doing now that they don't need to do to drive that outcome, then they can pull that back and become more efficient. And so driving towards the outcome, I think, is important. And that's just like, if you're running a factory, you don't just blindly do, we're going to do process A, then we're going to do process B, and what we get at the end, right? We're constantly monitoring what's coming out of the factory, and I think that that's what we're being a big proponent for.
So give me an example of what one of those outcomes could be.
Sure.
Is it? Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was just at a talk yesterday by two of our consulting agronomists, talking about rethinking how we think about core aeration, for example. So if you ask the superintendent, why do we core aerate? Well, to improve infiltration, to manage organic matter, maybe to have some improved gas exchange. Um, those are all outcomes, desirable outcomes, healthy turf outcomes. We definitely know that it disrupts the playing surface. It makes it less smooth, slower, and less firm. And so if you're going to do have those negative golfer experience outcomes temporarily, you better be darn sure that you're getting out of it what you are looking to. And so we would say, measure organic matter, measure your infiltration rates, you know, take core samples to make sure that you really do need to do something as disruptive as hollow core aeration. And if you don't, well, then maybe you can delay it, and still have a great golf experience, have a healthy turf environment, but only do what you have to do. So I think that's a great example, and we're seeing that transformation in the industry. And superintendents are really, questioning, hey, do I have to keep doing what I've been doing every year, or can I be more outcome focused?
But your point is, the overall point is how you then
Correct.
use that data,
Right.
how you
Collecting that
interpret it, and the way you channel it.
exactly. Collecting that data on its own isn't particularly useful if you're not going to do anything with it, if it's not helping you drive to a more desirable outcome, whether that's, playing surface performance or turf health, or preferably a combination of the two.
Is there a danger at all, and I've spoken to a few superintendents,
Yeah.
that they're almost
Yeah.
being overwhelmed with both data, but different ways of measuring data, and it's quite challenging for them. They've got to keep up. And I was speaking to a superintendent yesterday, and they were saying we need a bit of help from the suppliers and the organisations just to streamline this and make it feasible for us to use this information.
Yeah. That's why I prefaced this by saying I wanted to, our team is focused on thinking about outcomes rather than just data for the sake of data. And so you really have to ask yourself as a superintendent, what are the outcomes that I'm trying to deliver to my ownership, to my members, to my customers, and then decide what data is going to be useful for them to monitor those outcomes.
Matt, your next change for the business of golf is to make superintendents part of the leadership team. Tell me about that.
Well, it's a desired outcome. I don't have a game plan about how we can do that, but I do think as an industry we should be talking about it. I'm been very fortunate in my job right now to serve on the board of a small two-course operator, and I'll go to board meetings, and the CEO will be there, the general manager will be there, maybe the golf professional sometimes will be there, but the superintendent is hardly ever there, and I don't think that that's universal. I think there's many places where the superintendent is at that table, but I think there's also a lot of times when they're not. And our superintendents are the stewards of the most valuable assets in the game. Like the golf courses are by far the most valuable assets in golf. And so I think it's a real miss when courses aren't having that person representing that asset, important asset. If there's no golf course, there's no golf club at the leadership table. It when you think about the business decisions that are happening there, just yesterday, same talk I was at about core aeration, and the question was asked to the audience, what drives your decisions about when to aerate? And a lot of them put up their hand and said the golf calendar. Well, that's a business decision. If the timing of that aeration is being disrupted because of the golf calendar, or the golf calendar is being disrupted because of the aeration, like that's at a country club, maybe it's not a dollars and cents business decision, but it's still a business decision, and a for-profit golf course, it's definitely a business decision. They should be sitting down and talking about those things at the leadership table, not through the general manager or through the golf professional. And I just really think that given the sophistication of turf management now, the value of the golf course, that it makes perfect sense that they would be a co-partner at that leadership team. And I just would like to see more of that.
You're saying it's a missed opportunity not to have the superintendent on the leadership team, but if you were to do a SWOT analysis, given all the regulation that's coming in and the public perception of golf and the kind of external threats that are coming in, perhaps it's also a risk not to have the superintendent on
Oh,
the
I
leadership team.
think that's an excellent point, and certainly, look, I don't want to imply that when a superintendent isn't in the leadership team that that their viewpoints and perspectives are not being relayed, but I just think it's better to get it straight from the horse's mouth. Now, I will say that uh, there's a two sides to that coin. If you, as a superintendent, have the opportunity to become part of the leadership team, you're also going to have to step up into that responsibility. So,
And not everyone's going to be
well,
comfortable
not
doing that.
exactly. Not I know a lot of superintendents who would rather be in their their Carhartt overalls and their hands are dirty and they love to be on the golf course. That's why they became a superintendent. And the thought of spending a couple hours each week in a leadership meeting is not what they necessarily signed up for. I also think I like to joke that the general manager can probably tell you how many Diet Cokes were sold to women between the ages of 30 to 40 on a Tuesday afternoon. Well, as a superintendent, getting back to the outcome and data, you're going to have to come with a similar level of understanding and measurement of the performance of your golf course to have a equal seat at the table. But I think that's a great thing. In my job, as a scientist, I report to people who aren't scientists at all, and I would never come not equipped with my scientific perspective backed by data, because otherwise I'm just a person in the room with an opinion. And so, but I think that this is the opportunity that superintendents have to take the next step in increasing the professionalism of what it means to be a turf manager and a superintendent. And I think when I see young people, young superintendents now, I think they're hungry for that, and I think that this would be a great step forward for superintendents.
You mentioned water consumption in the previous point, and in the UK, where I'm from, something like 60 to 70% of courses are reliant to some degree or another on potable water,
Mhm.
drinking water, which frankly is an existential threat
Yeah.
to businesses. And this is perhaps why superintendents need to be on the leadership team, so it takes out the opinion of those who perhaps see water consumption as a cost, to rather the kind of the real threat, which is actually we've got to drive down the amount of water consumption to be sustainable, to be politically sustainable
Yes.
as well as business sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that in the UK, even you guys are talking about the threat of water availability and quality, and certainly that's the case here in the U.S. Um, most visibly in the desert of California and Nevada and Utah, but even other parts of the country, even here in Florida, where there's copious amounts of water, but the quality isn't so great. Those are big league. You called them existential. I agree with that sentiment. These are big league decisions that come down to, the finances of water. It's probably going to come down to, how do we look at the golf course for opportunities to take turf out of play? That has yes, that's clearly important and in the wheelhouse of the superintendent, but it also impacts the golf and the golf experience. So the golf professional is gonna have a view on that, and it's an opportunity as a team, as a leadership team at a golf course, to make the conscious decisions about how are we going to manage, our availability and the threat of our availability of water going forward.
Matt, your final change for the business of golf is to make more people aware of careers in turf, especially golf. Tell me about that.
Well, we started the conversation with, I was introduced to the game through family, and I talked to lots of superintendents who introduced through golf to golf through their family. Our Green Section Award this winner this year, Mr. Paul Latshaw, his son is a turf manager. His father was a turf manager. T.A. Barker, the outgoing GCSAA president, 3 generations, and maybe even now 4 generations, which is fantastic. Obviously, it's wonderful that this is a family business, and that when you have that emotional connection to the game, you're going to want to be in it for a long time. But it's also becoming, I think, a more and more scientific driven profession. I would like it to be a more visible profession. certainly at the USGA, we're celebrating our superintendents through the Green Section Award, through the EJ Marshall Award, which we give to the host superintendent of our Open and Women's Open championships.
And you're showing them on TV as well.
We give that award before we even give it to
Yeah.
the winner of the golf tournament. And so raising the awareness of superintendents and those that take care of our golf courses is clearly a priority to the USGA. But this is such a great time to become a turf manager, because it is becoming such a robust business and science and management job. It's a big job, but you get to be on the most beautiful golf courses in the world. Sunset and sunrise to me on a golf course, you can't beat it. So I would love that more people know that that's even a thing, because I bet you if you walked into most classrooms, high school classrooms, they're not aware that this even exists as a possibility. And if you're somebody that's thinking about going into biosciences or chemistry or engineering, I think this is a great alternative path to getting a job where you can get your hands dirty, you can manage great people, you can be outside and doing it with science and data. I think it's a great time, but more people need to be aware of that.
Well, you mentioned, young people as well. And, there's studies that show, it's a particular age, maybe age 6, 7. This is when perceptions are formed. And maybe that's the moment to have local school children coming on to golf courses. There's the First Green program. There are initiatives like that can facilitate that experience.
It is. And we're doing our part. Obviously, the Green Section is most focused on helping golf course superintendents, advance the science and practice of turf grass maintenance. But for example, in where I live in Pinehurst, we're bringing every 5th grader in our county once a year through the USGA to get exposed to golf and what the USGA does. And part of that is the Green Section. A little later in life, we've got a wonderful program that we call the USGA Greenkeeper Apprenticeship Program, and where we're teaching skills at community colleges and on the job. It's a 1-year true journey worker program where we get to introduce people who, maybe they're working entry-level job on the golf course. Maybe they're getting minimum wage. It gives them an opportunity to add some new skills to their repertoire, become more valuable to the golf course and the superintendent, be able to be responsible for more things. And what happens is that means they can get a pay raise. Maybe they can switch from hourly to salary. Maybe they can even get on an assistant in training track. So it's really been a great program. I'm enormously proud of, to be able to make some folks aware that there's a career for them in turf, and to give them the skills to make sure that they can achieve that.
Great programs going, great opportunities. But I wonder as well, I've heard a lots about superintendents taking responsibility themselves, and there's nothing stopping a superintendent going to a local school or going to, because resource, labor, these are all challenges as well.
Correct. And I think that's a twofold benefit in that, yes, hopefully they're going to expose kids to, hey, I could have a job doing this. I love being outside. I love being in the grass, but it also allows a window into the true value of golf courses to the communities around them, the green spaces. They are professionally managed in ways that I think the general public does not recognize when they see 100 acres of managed turf grass, and they wonder what goes into that. All these outreach programs are critically important to share a more balanced view of what golf is with the world, because obviously a threat to golf is people challenging its very existence and the premise of it. And so I think that those outreach programs from superintendents, from the USGA, from the GCSAA, or from Syngenta are, critically important, both selfishly for the game, but also to share the message of what golf truly is.
It was part of your story that you were exposed to golf at a younger age, and then saw a career opportunity.
Yeah.
And that can be repeated, and that's a great solution.
Exactly.
Matt Pringle, thank you very much indeed for sharing your changes to the business of golf.
Thanks, Gary. It's been great to be here.